Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things. In this very interesting conversation between Shivguru and Vadeesh, we hear his journey from being an embedded programmer, learning C, C++, to actually understanding the domains of healthcare to automotive to telecom, and just having a sense of curiosity of how the domain works. He also shares how he is combating the challenge of building quality software. And in fact, he uses the term called automating, automation testing. And we also cover a lot of conversations around configuration management and how critical it becomes understanding of the domain and how important it is to have the infrastructure always up and creating that environment of learning and teaching. Vadish is a founder, CEO of AlgoShack, and you'll hear a very interesting conversation. Listen on.
Yeah. Hi, Vadeesh. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hello, Shiv. Good to meet you in the first place. Thank you for this opportunity. I've heard about this series and I'm very curious, how does this conversation go? Thank you.
Actually, I have also been using my curiosity to drive all these conversations. So, since both of us are curious, let us probably explore together.
Yeah, sure.
I think a good place to start would be your origin story as to what you did and how you got into IT in general, and then with decades of experience, how you kind of got into this area of testing.
Right. So I think for those who passed out in early 1990s, there were probably not too many options at that point in time. And software, there were not too many companies in software, but the likes of, Infosys and Wipro were making a buzz at that point in time. So it was probably an obvious choice that we got into it. But I think my MTech thesis also, helped in that process. After my graduation, after my MTech, I was at NAL. I was under Dr. UN Sinha, one of the well-known computer scientists. And he used to run a lab called Flow Solver at NAL. I was there as an intern. I continued there for some time. And that's when I picked up interest for software. Of course, when some of us were with Dr. UN Sinha, it was all about parallel computing. And of course, I didn't get a chance to pursue in that space specifically, but I could get into subsequently, real-time embedded systems, automotive control applications, and telecommunications. Thanks to CG Smith Software. They were a small company at that point in time, but were entirely focused on real-time automotive control applications. There were customers like Delco at that point in time. This, in mid-90s that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to Wipro, I had the opportunity to work for several years, over 7 years, in the area of telecommunications. We would call it carrier networks. It was all about time division multiplexing to begin with. Mm-hmm. And of course, then we moved on to soft switches and whatnot, but it was initially focused on TDM, etc. So I got the opportunity to work on embedded software in that process for several years. And then I was looking for some change, having worked in the embedded software space for several years. And then I got into first consulting group. They were not into embedded software. They were only into healthcare IT.
Okay.
They were delivering IT and consulting services to payers, providers, and life sciences companies. But then it also gave me, significant insights as to what it means to work on software-only applications with little or no hardware interaction.
Okay.
While my previous experience was all about embedded software that involved significant, hardware interactions and OS level work, real-time operating system level work. So, and what was common all through, of course, common aspect was the process of developing software. And that was, I could relate wherever I went. The companies like Nortel Networks in those days, I mean, probably 30 years ago, they already, at that time, they supported distributed software development and could engage with multiple companies across the globe as vendors. They could get software developed by teams across the globe. And that was all because of significant processes and systems that they had in place. I still remember very well about their software configuration management tool. Even the most advanced ones, the next generational configuration management tools today probably can't compete with some of the features that they have had in their proprietary systems and tools. What was common was process. What was common was, things like skills and capability development, so to say, testing. And that is probably one of the reasons why we chose testing to be the area of focus when we started on our own about 5 years ago with some of my co-founders when we started with the journey of AlgoShack. Having worked with so many software companies in the embedded software space, in the telecommunication space, in the automotive control application space, and then subsequently in the healthcare space. One of the key challenge was, and it continues to be, to develop quality software in time and continuously on an ongoing basis to establish that edge over competition. And that problem exists even today. I mean, and that's what we are trying to solve with AlgoShack. We're trying to disrupt at least one portion of it, the testing portion of it, to make testing faster by automating test automation. That's probably to sum it up. Let me also quickly add, we also have seen how companies struggled and how companies perished, for not being able to change quickly and adopt to changing market requirements. For example, Nortel Networks. It was a giant at one point in time, but lost out to those soft switch vendors that started in small garages. Nortel did make an attempt to change, but their changes were incremental and there was no fundamental change that they attempted because they were too wedded to the installed base that they had world over. So some of this helped also position our initiative when we started on our own. Today what we wanted is don't go by the rule book, don't go by the way automation is done in the industry. Change it upside down and make it better, make it a lot faster without compromising on quality. So if that helps give you a feel for why we do what we do today based on what we experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And with such a wide and varied background, there are multiple curiosity questions that come to my mind. Before that, since you mentioned configuration management, and since you've also been in embedded hardware side and also the software side, one of my very first experiences of teaching configuration management to a team of engineers in one of the defense organizations.
Okay.
So after the first 15 minutes, I could see very bored faces.
Yeah.
Then I was seriously wondering, why, what's wrong, or no, what is it that I'm missing?
Yep.
Then one of them said that, why are you teaching us all these things? Because, in software, configuration management is a major nightmare area.
Absolutely.
Whereas in hardware, they are so disciplined. Every little change for every board, every circuit. So they said, no, this is something that we must do, we have to, and we have been doing.
Yes.
So why are you saying why configuration management, importance of configuration management and all that? So then we said, okay, I don't need to tell you about all those things. Let us now get into maybe some of the major differences between hardware configuration and software configuration management, etc. And then it became a more interactive session.
Yeah.
So configuration management and hardware, that brought me that memory.
Absolutely. I mean, even today, one of the key challenges for companies to deploy seamless DevOps processes, one of the key challenges is the tools that they use for software configuration management. Of course, there are, the technology that they use, programming languages that they use add to it, but you will not be able to, automate a build process. If you're not able to automate build process, then the whole DevOps chain breaks. And people who didn't think about it, it's a transformational change when they have to go for it. And I've seen this in the medical devices industry.
Oh, okay.
Medical devices, at one point in time, they thought they were hardware centric. They realized of late that they're also technology companies. They have significant software running in each of those hardware devices. And of course, for positioning those companies as software companies, they also have valuation angle, in their mind when they do that. But that said, there is significant software, and the software needs to be distributed to devices that are deployed globally. Even if you consider a hospital chain, today hospitals are distributed globally. Even if you consider a hospital, it'll have its bases across the globe. Now you need to deploy software to all these devices, not only for scheduled maintenance, but also for preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
If a CT machine goes down, it's a revenue loss, but it's a huge clinical risk at a hospital. So you have to distribute patches and upgrades seamlessly from a central location. And this calls for seamless DevOps processes and calls for, in the first place, proper software configuration management tools and processes. Processes and tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not only your software configuration, but also the deployment environment configurations.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, because the drivers may not be compatible, and suddenly,
Absolutely, and that is the, you have to have Dockerization done so that your upgrades are seamless. Otherwise, with each environment, you will run into trouble, right? Because you won't know what those environments have. So all this has its root in software configuration management processes and tools, in my view. So, we struggle even today. When we generate scripts, it solves only half the problem. When you are able to execute scripts without manual intervention, it better be touchless, because when it involves somebody to trigger, then it depends on that individual when to trigger, what to trigger. If it is made touchless, then you actually realize the benefits of automation. If it is to be triggered manually, then the benefits of automation is not realized, and this calls for storing scripts in appropriate place and triggering execution. So we will be talking about configuration management tools, of course, specifically in this case test management, test data management, and test cloud management and so on. But again, we would be discussing configuration management at the core of it.
Wonderful.
So I mean, I share the same passion, Shiv.
So a couple of other things that you mentioned. Now, one, across the different domains that you worked in, like for instance, when you said whether it is automotive, embedded, or healthcare, and so on, you found some common threads in terms of processes, practices, discipline, and so on.
Yes.
The two questions related to that. One is how important is it for someone to understand the domain at least? And part two of that is how difficult is it? Because coming from another domain with some, let's say, the transferable skills, as an individual, have you faced this, what we call the imposter syndrome? Or how have you been able to overcome that? Because one of the examples that you yourself mentioned was the deployment environment in these hospitals. Right? So you need to understand how that business works and what happens so that your techniques can be applied in that context, even though you may not be a domain expert in that.
Right.
So how have you been able to jump across all these different domains and contexts?
Yeah, I think domain is very critical element in all this. If we don't understand the domain that we work on, we will not be able to relate much to the domain users, and products have to be user centric. Products and solutions and services, whatever that it is, I think it got to be user centric. So I'll start with probably healthcare, and then I'll move on to other domains. I had the opportunity to work for this company called First Consulting Group that got subsequently merged with CSC, which is now DXC Technology. And FCG, before it got acquired, it was FCG had spent about 26, 27 years in the industry as a US corporation. And if I'm right, FCG was incorporated sometime around 1980. And they were the first to coin this term called computer on wheels. FCG was into consulting business, focused on hospitals and health insurance companies and life sciences companies, initially in the US, and then they spread across to Europe as well. So people would literally go to hospitals and they would carry the computer as the doctor moved from one ward to another. And on behalf of the doctor, these consultants would enter data into the computer, because doctors were they were not interested. They thought computer would come in the way of their their treatment. It would take their focus away from the patient. If they are with the patient for 10 minutes, they want to spend all the 10 minutes with the patient and not with the computer. So people had to prove that computer would help you maximize your attention to the patient, and that you could attend to more and more patients. So the point here is that if you don't address the needs of the domain users, then you will not get anywhere. And this was an acute problem in the healthcare industry, and it continues to be a challenge. And that is the reason why subsequently, whenever we built a team, the teams would always have doctors, nurses, radiologists. Some 10, 15 years ago, you would not find many radiologists in a city. Even then, we would have on our teams radiologists. If we were working on a CT machine or an MR machine, or if we were working with anything that was related to radiology, radiology information systems, then we would have radiologists in the team, because otherwise customer wouldn't listen to us. They wouldn't even respect us. So in my mind, domain is core. I mean, I think that comes first. You may call it business processes or whatsoever. And then comes the, software products, applications. If we don't empathize with the domain user, if you don't try to understand, his viewpoint, I think will not be able to cater to his or her needs. This was applicable when I worked in the telecom domain, and when I worked in the other embedded software areas. For example, Wipro would spend so much time in training people, not as much in terms of classroom training, but on the job training, in teaching people session initiation protocol, etc. So core to, I'm talking about, late 1990s and early 2000, so core to the telecom domain. If you're into switching, broadband networks is another thing, and then wireless is the third. In those days, that's how telecom was divided into in terms of business. But if you're into switching, if you don't understand how a class 5 switch works, what's a real-time operating system is about, and what's a protocol, like you have HL7 protocol in healthcare industry, you have SS7 protocols in the telecom industry. So unless you understand these, and there were other protocols like ISUP and BTUP and from the traditional TDM space. So people would spend so much time learning these, doing some hands-on, exercises, getting a grip of it, and people in the telecom division would know about telecom to a decent extent to have a good conversation with the likes of Cisco and Avaya and Nortel. I'm talking about those days. And subsequently, I had the opportunity to work with AT&T when it comes to ISPs, service providers, telecom service providers. So I think domain is very important. You may not be able to master it. You can never be a doctor. That opportunity is lost already. But I think how best we can collaborate with people who have significant domain knowledge and act as bridge, with the domain users. I think that's something common that I have experienced.
Yeah. So the part 2 was, what is the Vadeesh magic formula that helped you accelerate or shorten the time needed to learn this new domain and be effective?
I'm not sure there was any magic. I think each took time. I still remember when I moved from automotive control application space, wherein we would actually review code written in assembly languages and write code in assembly languages. From there, when I moved to Wipro to work in the telecom division, switching division, at that point in time, we were working for Nortel. There was an ODC. We had to learn this language called Protel. It was Nortel's proprietary language. It had the characteristics of C and C++, but it was very different. And whatever we followed in C or C++, not so much of C++ in those days, you had to reverse it to get to Protel and to
Okay.
So it was made so complex that even if somebody hacks the code, wouldn't follow what was being written, what was it intended to do. That kind of precaution was taken by companies like Nortel. They developed a programming language for that purpose. So that was a barrier, and then we had to learn a number of protocols and how a class-wise switch handled it. That was not easy. I think it would have taken easily a couple of years before I could be comfortable in that space. I think it calls for that kind of investment. And then I thought when I moved to healthcare, it would be very easy because it is all about more open domain than telecom, that needed real-time operating systems, so many protocols and country-specific requirements and whatnot. And then there was this transition from TDM to soft switching, etc. But after going there, I realized the enormity of and the new challenges that you have to understand the psychology of doctors, work with doctors. So I think it always needed significant amount of investment, and one has to have patience, I think, and prioritize it. That domain is important. And some of these companies helped build that culture of learning, focus on learning. I mean, I still feel, even today, I am a Wiproid. I mean, in that sense,
Okay.
I feel that I graduated from Wipro. I learned a lot when I was there. Similar feeling for my stint at FCG.
Yeah, very, very nice. Since you mentioned patience, I wanted to segue into slightly, probably the next larger theme of AlgoShack.
Yeah.
Of being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Generally, we find that entrepreneurs are impatient. Now, impatient in that they want to bring a change, they want to create an impact, they are not satisfied with things being the same. So how was that transition for you from being patient or having to be patient to probably what one may also call as the startup bug that bit you?
As we close this conversation, very interesting to listen Vadeesh's career journey. We are now moving from his corporate journey to his startup journey. Don't forget to listen our episode on next Tuesday.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
please subscribe on your favorite podcast client
and spread the word in your network.
If you'd like to share your story,
contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.